Evolution doesn't whisper, it roars. And nowhere did it roar louder than in the age of giants, when creatures of such staggering size stalked the planet that their very existence defies comprehension. Imagine predators whose jaws could swallow a human whole without touching the sides. Ocean behemoths that made toad-eyes blue whales look modest. Flying reptiles with wingspans that rivaled small aircraft. And herbivores so tall they could browse treetops 4 stories high. These weren't gradual experiments in scale. They were biological explosions, evolutionary gambles that pushed flesh, bone, and muscle to their absolute limits. For hundreds of millions of years, Earth belonged to titans that dominated every ecosystem, from the deepest trenches to the highest mountain passes, from steaming swamps to windswept plains. Their rain-shaped continents, carved landscapes, and established food webs built entirely around monstrous proportions. This is the chronicle of the largest creatures ever to rule this world, animals so immense they seem pulled from mythology rather than paleontology, and the scientific discoveries that revealed how they lived, hunted, migrated, and ultimately disappeared, leaving behind only fossils that still stagger researchers today. Dreadnoughtus, the colossal titanosaur. The ground trembled with each footfall and the trees bent under the weight of its passing. Dreadnoughtus shrani was a living mountain, a titanosaur so massive that even its name means fears nothing, and for good reason. Discovered in southern Patagonia by paleontologist Kenneth Lacovara and his team, this herbivorous giant represents one of the most complete skeletons of any supermassive dinosaur ever found, giving scientists an unprecedented window into how the largest land animals ever to exist actually functioned. The specimen, unearthed from the Cerro Fortaleza Formation, preserves roughly 70% of the skeleton, including massive limb bones, vertebrae the size of dining tables, and a shoulder blade taller than a grown man. Conservative estimates place Dreadnoughtus at approximately 26 meters long from nose to tail tip, with a weight exceeding 59 metric tons, equivalent to more than a dozen African elephants combined. But here's where it gets truly staggering. Analysis of the bone microstructure revealed this individual was still growing when it died. The specimen shows no evidence of reaching skeletal maturity, meaning Dreadnoughtus could have grown even larger had it survived. This realization sent shockwaves through paleontology because it suggested that the upper limits of sauropod size might be even more extreme than previously calculated. The mechanics of moving such mass required revolutionary anatomical engineering. Dreadnoughtus possessed limb bones with wall thicknesses and internal architectures specifically adapted to withstand compressive forces that would shatter the skeletons of smaller animals. Its femur, the thigh bone, measured over 2 meters in length and was constructed like a biological pillar with dense cortical bone arranged in stress-resistant patterns. Computer modeling of these bones demonstrates they could support weights far exceeding the animal's estimated mass, providing a substantial safety margin that allowed Dreadnoughtus to navigate uneven terrain without catastrophic skeletal failure. The vertebral column tells an equally remarkable story. Each vertebra was riddled with air sacs, extensions of the respiratory system that invaded the bone itself, creating a honeycomb structure that dramatically reduced weight without sacrificing strength. This pneumatization was so extensive that individual vertebrae weighing several hundred kilograms in solid bone were reduced to perhaps a third of that mass. The neural spines, the tall projections rising from each vertebra, served as attachment points for massive ligaments and muscles that supported the creature's neck and tail, functioning like biological suspension bridges that distributed weight across the entire spinal column. Dreadnoughtus's tail was a masterpiece of biological engineering in its own right. Composed of more than 30 caudal vertebrae, it tapered from massive base elements to a whip-like tip, potentially capable of generating supersonic crack sounds as a defensive weapon or communication signal. Biomechanical analysis suggests the tail's musculature could produce devastating strikes, transforming what appears to be a simple counterbalance into an active defensive tool against predators. Deep scars and healed injuries found on some titanosaur tail vertebrae support this interpretation, showing these animals actively use their tails in potentially combat situations. The question of how Dreadnoughtus fed itself haunted researchers for years. An animal of this size required enormous caloric intake. Estimates suggest somewhere between 400 to 800 kilograms of plant matter daily just to maintain basic metabolic functions. Yet Dreadnoughtus possessed relatively simple, peg-like teeth unsuited for chewing. The answer lies in a feeding strategy called bulk processing. The animal stripped vegetation wholesale, swallowing it largely intact, and relied on a massive fermentation chamber in its gut, where bacteria broke down cellulose over extended periods. Gastroliths, stomach stones, found with some titanosaur specimens, suggest these animals swallowed rocks that churned in their guts, mechanically grinding food into digestible paste. Recent isotope analysis of Dreadnoughtus bone chemistry revealed something unexpected about its diet. The ratios of certain elements suggest this titanosaur fed primarily on low-growing vegetation rather than high tree canopies, despite its towering size. This discovery challenged assumptions about sauropod feeding strategies and suggested that Dreadnoughtus used its tremendous bulk not to reach high foliage, but to dominate ground-level resources, essentially outcompeting smaller herbivores through sheer consumption capacity. Its size became a feeding advantage not through reach, but through volume. It could simply eat more than anything else in its ecosystem. The preservation of this particular Dreadnoughtus specimen offers crucial insights into titanosaur mortality and burial conditions. The animal died near an ancient river system during what appears to have been a catastrophic flood event. Sedimentological analysis shows the carcass was rapidly buried under tons of sand and silt, which protected the bones from scavengers and weathering. The completeness of the skeleton, including delicate ribs and smaller bones usually lost to decay, suggests burial occurred within days of death, creating a time capsule that preserved not just the bones, but their precise anatomical relationships. Patagotitan, the titanosaur that redefined massive. When paleontologists first uncovered the bones in Patagonia's Chubut province, they knew immediately they had found something extraordinary. The femur alone measured 2.4 meters, longer than most humans are tall, and its circumference required multiple people to encircle with outstretched arms. Patagotitan majorum, described from multiple individuals found in the same bone bed, represents what may be the largest land animal ever to exist, pushing the absolute limits of terrestrial body size. The discovery site yielded remains from at least 6 individuals, providing an unprecedented dataset for understanding titanosaur biology, growth patterns, and social behavior. Mass estimates for Patagotitan vary depending on methodology, but most calculations place the largest individuals between 69 and 77 metric tons, figures that dwarf even Dreadnoughtus. Some researchers suggest maximum weights could have exceeded 80 tons, approaching the theoretical limits of what land-based skeletons can support under Earth's gravity. At these masses, every movement becomes a calculated risk, every step a potential catastrophe if the ground proves unstable. Yet Patagotitan thrived in its late Cretaceous environment, apparently moving in small herds across floodplains and river valleys. The bone bed itself tells a fascinating story. Finding multiple individuals preserved together suggests these titanosaurs died during a single, catastrophic event, possibly a drought that concentrated animals around a shrinking water source, or a flood that overwhelmed a migrating group. The age variation among specimens, from juveniles to mature adults, hints at family groups or at least age-mixed herds moving together across the landscape. This social behavior would have been essential for protection, particularly for younger animals vulnerable to the large predators sharing their world. Patagotitan's skeletal construction shows refinements even beyond those seen in Dreadnoughtus. The vertebrae are so extensively pneumatized that some are nearly hollow, with bone walls thinned to mere centimetres while maintaining structural integrity through internal struts arranged in geometrically optimal patterns. Engineers studying these vertebrae have found inspiration for lightweight construction techniques, as the natural architecture achieves strength-to-weight ratios that rival modern synthetic materials. The cervical vertebrae, those forming the neck, are particularly remarkable, with some individual bones exceeding 1 metre in length, yet weighing relatively little due to extreme pneumatization. The limb proportions of Hatzegopteryx reveal adaptation specifically for supporting extreme mass. The humerus and femur are both exceptionally robust, with expanded articular surfaces that distribute weight across larger areas of cartilage and reduce pressure on any single point. The feet were column-like, with thick pads of fibrous tissue cushioning each step, much like elephants, but scaled up dramatically. Trackway evidence from other large titanosaurs shows they walked with a relatively narrow gauge, feet placed nearly in line rather than far apart, which seems counterintuitive for stability, but actually reduces the twisting forces transmitted through the limbs with each stride. Recent CT scanning of Hatzegopteryx's skull material revealed unexpected complexity in the cranial air sinus systems. These sinuses extended throughout the skull, invading even the brain case and creating a structure that was remarkably lightweight for its size. But the sinuses served another purpose. They formed resonating chambers that may have amplified vocalizations, allowing these giants to communicate across vast distances. Analysis of the sinus geometry suggests Hatzegopteryx could produce powerful, low-frequency calls, infrasound, below the range of human hearing, that travelled for kilometres through dense forest, enabling herd coordination and possibly territorial displays. The mystery of titanosaur reproduction becomes particularly acute with animals of Hatzegopteryx's size. Nesting sites discovered in Patagonia show these dinosaurs laid relatively small eggs, about the size of volleyballs, in clutches of 15 to 30. The hatchlings emerged weighing perhaps 5 kilograms, meaning a baby Hatzegopteryx was roughly 15,000 times smaller than its parent. This extraordinary size difference represents one of the most extreme growth trajectories in animal history. Young titanosaurs had to grow rapidly while avoiding predators, likely reaching several tons within their first few years before achieving relative safety through size. Growth rate analysis using bone histology reveals Hatzegopteryx grew astonishingly fast during its juvenile phase, adding multiple tons of body mass annually. The bones show rapid deposition of highly vascularized tissue rich in blood vessels, indicating metabolic rates much higher than modern reptiles. Some researchers argue this growth pattern suggests titanosaurs were neither fully warm-blooded like mammals nor cold-blooded like modern reptiles, but something in between, perhaps regional heterothermy, where core body temperature remained elevated through bulk and metabolism while extremities operated cooler. This intermediate strategy might have been essential for animals of such extreme size. Argentinosaurus, the Patagonian giant. For decades, Argentinosaurus huinquilensis held the crown as the largest dinosaur ever discovered, and despite recent challenges, it remains one of the most massive animals ever to walk the planet. Found in the Huincal Formation of Argentina, this titanosaur is known from fragmentary remains, vertebrae, ribs, a femur, and pieces of the hip. But those fragments tell a story of almost incomprehensible size. A single vertebra measures 1.59 meters tall, with neural spines rising like castle towers from the main body of the bone. When these specimens were first prepared in the Museo Municipal Carmen Funes, researchers struggled to comprehend what they were looking at. Mass estimates for Argentinosaurus range wildly depending on methodology, from a conservative 65 tons to potentially over 90 tons for the largest individuals. The challenge lies in the fragmentary nature of the fossil record. Without a complete skeleton, paleontologists must extrapolate total body mass from individual bones, comparing proportions with better-known sauropods and applying scaling equations. Different assumptions about body proportions, tissue density, and skeletal completeness yield dramatically different results. Some researchers argue Argentinosaurus represents the absolute maximum size achievable by a terrestrial animal, while others suggest even larger titanosaurs might await discovery in Patagonian badlands. The femur of Argentinosaurus, the most complete large bone recovered, measures 2.5 meters in length and shows adaptations for supporting staggering loads. The bone shaft is extraordinarily thick, with cortical bone walls exceeding 10 centimeters in some areas. The articular surfaces at each end are massive, spreading load distribution across vast areas of cartilage. Yet despite this robust construction, the bone shows signs of extreme stress during life. Microscopic analysis reveals areas of bone remodeling where the skeleton actively repaired microfractures caused by the constant loading and unloading of the animal's weight during normal locomotion. One of the most intriguing aspects of Argentinosaurus is what its vertebrae reveal about sauropod neck mechanics. The cervical vertebrae are bifurcated, split into twin neural spines, creating a groove down the center of each bone. This groove housed a massive nuchal ligament, an elastic structure running from the back of the skull to the base of the tail. This ligament worked like a biological suspension cable, supporting the neck's weight passively without requiring constant muscular effort. Elephants and bison have similar structures, but in Argentinosaurus, the system was scaled to support a neck weighing multiple tons. The environment Argentinosaurus inhabited was dramatically different from modern Patagonia. During the Middle Cretaceous, the region was a vast floodplain crossed by meandering rivers and dotted with forest patches. Seasonal rainfall created a landscape alternating between lush growth and arid conditions, forcing large herbivores to migrate between resource patches. Fossil evidence suggests Argentinosaurus shared this world with massive predators like Giganotosaurus and Mapusaurus, carnivores that hunted in packs and may have targeted titanosaur herds. The evolutionary arms race between these giants drove both groups to extreme sizes, predators growing larger to tackle bigger prey, herbivores growing larger to deter predators. Trackway evidence from titanosaurs in similar size ranges provides crucial insights into how Argentinosaurus moved. The tracks show these animals walked relatively quickly despite their bulk, maintaining speeds around 4 to 5 kilometers per hour during normal travel. The stride length, the distance between successive footprints, reached 4 to 5 meters, requiring enormous muscular power to swing each leg forward and plant it firmly enough to support the animal's weight. The footprints themselves are enormous circular impressions, some exceeding 1 meter in diameter, pressed deep into ancient mud, by forces exceeding 20 tons per foot. The question of Argentinosaurus's daily energy requirements has fascinated biologists for years. Metabolic scaling models suggest an animal of 70 to 90 tons requires between 10,000 and 15,000 calories daily, the equivalent of eating 2 to 3 tons of vegetation. To meet these needs, Argentinosaurus likely fed nearly continuously during daylight hours, moving slowly through its environment like a mobile vacuum, stripping vegetation from anything within reach. The combination of a long neck and massive body created a feeding envelope covering an enormous volume. The animal could access food across a wide radius without moving its feet, minimizing energy expenditure. Recent geochemical analysis of Argentinosaurus bone samples revealed trace element signatures suggesting these animals consumed significant amounts of aquatic vegetation. The chemical ratios match those of modern animals feeding partly in wetland environments, implying Argentinosaurus waded into rivers and lakes to browse on floating plants, submerged vegetation, and shoreline growth. This behavior would have provided access to particularly nutritious plant matter rich in proteins and minerals, supplementing the tougher terrestrial vegetation making up most of their diet. The image of these colossal animals standing belly deep in ancient rivers, necks extended to graze on water lilies, adds a surreal dimension to reconstructing their lives. Spinosaurus, the river monster. Forget everything you think you know about predatory dinosaurs. Spinosaurus aegyptiacus wasn't just another large theropod. It was a bizarre, semi-aquatic nightmare that hunted in rivers and coastal environments, equipped with a sailback profile that made it one of the most distinctive predators ever to exist. Recent discoveries and reanalyses have revolutionized our understanding of this creature, revealing an animal so specialized for aquatic life that it challenges our fundamental concepts of what a predatory dinosaur could become. At 15 to 16 meters in length and potentially 6 to 7 tons in weight, Spinosaurus matched or exceeded Tyrannosaurus rex in size, while adopting a lifestyle more similar to a giant crocodile. The most obvious feature, the massive neural sail rising from its back, has generated decades of debate. These neural spines, extensions of the vertebrae, reached heights of 1.6 meters or more, forming a spectacular display structure covered in skin and possibly brightly colored. Early theories suggested the sail served as a thermoregulatory device, absorbing or dissipating heat, like a solar panel. Modern analysis suggests a more complex function. The sail likely played roles in species recognition, sexual display, and visual intimidation, making Spinosaurus appear even more massive than it actually was when viewed from the side. The spines show rich vascularization patterns consistent with structures that were actively displayed and potentially flushed with blood for color changes. But the real revolution in Spinosaurus research came from examining its skeletal proportions and lifestyle adaptation. Unlike terrestrial theropods with long, powerful hind limbs, Spinosaurus had relatively short legs and elongated arms. Its feet weren't built for running. They were equipped with spreading toes, potentially webbed for swimming. The density of its bones revealed the most shocking adaptation. They were solid and dense, lacking the air-filled cavities typical of theropod dinosaurs. This pachyostosis, similar to that seen in penguins and hippos, served as ballast, allowing Spinosaurus to control its buoyancy while swimming and diving. The skull of Spinosaurus is unlike any other large theropod. Long, narrow, and crocodilian in profile, it's studded with conical teeth designed for gripping slippery prey rather than slicing flesh. The snout contains a rosette of enlarged teeth at the tip, creating a terminal grab zone perfect for snatching fish. Sensory pits along the jaw bones, similar to those in crocodiles, allowed Spinosaurus to detect pressure changes and vibrations in murky water, essentially feeling the movement of fish even when visibility was poor. The nostrils were positioned high on the skull, enabling the animal to breathe while mostly submerged. Internal ear structure analysis provided even more stunning evidence of aquatic adaptation. The semicircular canals, organs governing balance, show proportions matching those of semi-aquatic animals that regularly submerge and dive. This inner ear geometry differs dramatically from terrestrial theropods and instead resembles the configuration seen in wading birds, crocodiles, and other water-adapted vertebrates. Spinosaurus quite literally had the inner ear of a diving animal, suggesting it spent significant time fully submerged, possibly swimming after prey or walking along river bottoms. Isotope analysis of Spinosaurus teeth confirmed its aquatic diet. The chemical signatures match those of aquatic rather than terrestrial food chains, showing Spinosaurus fed predominantly on fish, aquatic reptiles, and possibly pterosaurs hunting near water. Fossil sites have yielded Spinosaurus remains alongside abundant fish fossils, including massive sawfish called Onchopristis, some reaching 7 to 8 meters long. Spinosaurus teeth have been found embedded in these fish fossils, direct evidence of predator-prey interactions. Some Spinosaurus specimens show healed rib fractures consistent with being struck by struggling prey or rival Spinosaurus during feeding frenzies. The forelimbs of Spinosaurus were massive and powerful, with huge curved claws and robust arm bones suggesting extreme strength. These weren't the vestigial arms of Tyrannosaurus. They were functional weapons and tools. Recent analysis suggests Spinosaurus used its arms for multiple purposes, grasping large fish, stabilizing itself on riverbanks, possibly even rowing while swimming. The muscle attachment sites indicate grip strength potentially exceeding that of any other theropod, capable of clutching struggling prey, weighing hundreds of kilograms while the animal maneuvered in water. Reconstructing Spinosaurus locomotion has proven controversial. Early reconstruction showed it as a fully bipedal animal, but recent skeletal analyses suggest it may have walked on all fours on land, using its powerful arms to support its weight in a quadrupedal stance. This would make Spinosaurus the only known quadrupedal theropod dinosaur. In water, it likely swam using powerful tail strokes. The caudal vertebrae show adaptations for strong swimming musculature, while the legs and possibly arms provided steering. This amphibious lifestyle would have been unique among large theropods, occupying a niche no other dinosaur successfully exploited. Giganotosaurus, the southern apex predator. In the Badlands of Patagonia, something even larger than Tyrannosaurus rex once prowled. Giganotosaurus carolini was a super predator measuring 12.4 meters long and weighing 8 tons or more, ruling the Middle Cretaceous ecosystems of what is now Argentina. Discovered by amateur fossil hunter Ruben Carolini, this colossal carnivore possessed a skull 1.6 meters long, larger than any Tyrannosaurus specimen, packed with serrated teeth designed for slicing through flesh rather than crushing bone. But size alone doesn't tell Giganotosaurus's full story. This was an animal built for a specific killing strategy, adapted to hunt the largest prey animals ever to walk on land. The teeth of Giganotosaurus differ fundamentally from those of Tyrannosaurus. Rather than thick, bone-crushing fangs, Giganotosaurus had blade-like teeth with fine serrations running along both edges. These teeth weren't designed to crack vertebrae or splinter bones. They were precision-cutting tools optimized for inflicting deep, bleeding wounds in thick-skinned prey. Microscopic analysis of the serrations shows they functioned like tiny saw teeth, catching and tearing soft tissue with each bite. The tooth structure suggests a feeding strategy based on inflicting massive trauma rather than delivering a single, killing bite. Giganotosaurus may have attacked large sauropods repeatedly, causing blood loss and shock until the prey collapsed. The skull architecture reveals an animal optimized for horizontal biting rather than vertical crushing. Where Tyrannosaurus had a deep, robust skull capable of generating enormous bite forces, Giganotosaurus had a longer, shallower skull that sacrificed pure force for cutting efficiency and jaw speed. Biomechanical modeling suggests Giganotosaurus could snap its jaws shut quickly, driving those blade-like teeth deep into flesh before prey could react. The skull's lighter construction also meant less weight to carry, allowing the animal to maintain its head in an attack position for extended periods while pursuing or harrying prey. Perhaps most intriguingly, fossil evidence suggests Giganotosaurus may have hunted in groups. A nearby site yielded multiple Mapusaurus skeletons, a closely related species preserved together in a bone bed. While direct evidence of pack hunting by Giganotosaurus itself remains circumstantial, the discovery of multiple large Carcharodontosaurs preserved together challenges the assumption that all large theropods were solitary. If Giganotosaurus hunted cooperatively, it could have targeted even adult titanosaurs, with multiple predators working together to bring down prey many times their individual size. This strategy appears in modern killer whales attacking large whales, and might represent a parallel innovation among Cretaceous superpredators. The forelimbs of Giganotosaurus, while smaller in proportion to its body than in earlier theropods, remained functional weapons equipped with 3 clawed fingers. Unlike Tyrannosaurus, which reduced its arms to tiny 2-fingered appendages, Giganotosaurus retained substantial arm strength and mobility. These arms likely helped restrain prey during attacks, providing additional grip while the jaws did their bloody work. The shoulder joint shows considerable mobility, suggesting these arms could slash and grab with significant force. The environment Giganotosaurus inhabited was teeming with enormous herbivores. Argentinosaurus, Andysaurus, and other gigantic titanosaurs filled the role of dominant mega-herbivores, representing protein sources measured in tens of tons. For a predator of Giganotosaurus's size, these giants were both an opportunity and necessity. Smaller prey wouldn't provide sufficient calories to sustain an 8-ton carnivore. The evolutionary arms race between these predators and prey drove both to extreme sizes, creating a uniquely supersized ecosystem where giants hunted giants. Locomotion studies based on limb proportions and trackways suggest Giganotosaurus moved at moderate speeds for its size, probably capable of reaching 25 to 30 kilometers per hour in short bursts. While not exceptionally fast, this speed would have been sufficient for ambushing or pursuing sauropods, which likely moved no faster than 15 to 20 kilometers per hour. The leg bones show robust construction with strong muscle attachment sites, indicating powerful strides rather than sustained distance running. This fits a hunting strategy based on short, explosive attacks rather than marathon chases. The discovery of Giganotosaurus reshaped understanding of Cretaceous predator evolution. For decades, tyrannosaurs were thought to represent the pinnacle of large predator design. Giganotosaurus demonstrated that alternative predatory strategies could achieve equal or greater sizes through different anatomical solutions. The Carcharodontosaur body plan, longer skulls, blade-like teeth, more functional arms, represented a completely different approach to apex predation, one equally successful in its ecological context. The fact that tyrannosaurs and Carcharodontosaurs never coexisted geographically suggests they filled the same niche in different parts of the world, independently converging on massive size. Tyrannosaurus rex, the Tyrant King revisited. Everyone knows Tyrannosaurus rex. It's the dinosaur, the one that dominates museums and popular culture, the apex predator whose name means Tyrant Lizard King. But the real animal was even more remarkable than its fearsome reputation suggests. Recent decades of intensive research have revealed Tyrannosaurus as a sophisticated super predator equipped with the most powerful bite force of any terrestrial animal, advanced sensory systems, and surprising intelligence. Measuring 12.3 meters long and weighing up to 9 tons, Tyrannosaurus ruled the latest Cretaceous ecosystems of Western North America, with evolutionary refinements honed over millions of years. The bite force of Tyrannosaurus rex was simply extraordinary. Biomechanical studies using finite element analysis, computer modeling of skull stress distribution, calculated maximum bite forces exceeding 60,000 newtons at the rear teeth, equivalent to the weight of 3 cars pressing down through a single tooth. This crushing power far exceeds any other terrestrial predator ever measured, including modern crocodiles, lions, and even extinct rivals like Giganotosaurus. The tooth marks Tyrannosaurus left on prey bones tell the story: deeply scored furrows, punched holes, and snapped vertebrae, showing this animal could bite through bone as easily as modern predators bite through meat. The teeth themselves were evolutionary masterpieces. Unlike the blade-like teeth of Carcharodontosaurs, Tyrannosaurus teeth were thick, conical spikes capable of withstanding enormous stresses without breaking. The front teeth were smaller and more forward-pointing, useful for gripping and stripping flesh. The side and back teeth were massive crushers, some exceeding 20 centimeters in length, with serrations that helped tear through hide and muscle. Tooth replacement was continuous. Tyrannosaurus shed and replaced its teeth regularly throughout life, ensuring it always had sharp, functional dentition. Some specimens show over 50 replacement teeth developing simultaneously in the jaws. But Tyrannosaurus was more than just teeth and jaws. Recent research has revealed sophisticated sensory capabilities that made it a frighteningly effective hunter. The brain, preserved as endocasts inside fossil skulls, shows enlarged olfactory bulbs, the region's processing smell, indicating Tyrannosaurus had an extraordinary sense of smell, possibly comparable to modern vultures. This adaptation would have made it an efficient scavenger, capable of detecting carrion from kilometers away. But it also made it a better hunter, able to track wounded prey by following blood trails even in dense forests, or at night. The eyes of Tyrannosaurus faced more forward than most theropods, providing significant binocular vision, overlapping fields of view that enabled depth perception. This forward-facing eye position is characteristic of predators that need to judge distances accurately for attacks. Visual acuity estimates suggest Tyrannosaurus could see clearly at much greater distances than humans, with some researchers proposing visual acuity rivaling or exceeding that of modern eagles. The combination of exceptional smell and keen eyesight made Tyrannosaurus a nearly omniscient predator in its environment. The controversial tiny arms of Tyrannosaurus have generated endless speculation, but recent analyses suggest they weren't vestigial. Despite their small size relative to the body, the arms were heavily muscled and could lift over 200 kilograms each. The shoulder joints show they had limited range of motion. They couldn't reach the mouth or extend far from the body, but within their range, they were incredibly powerful. Current theories suggest these arms helped Tyrannosaurus rise from prone positions, provided stability during feeding on carcasses, or possibly gripped struggling prey during attacks. Some researchers have proposed they were used during mating, though direct evidence remains elusive. Growth rate analysis reveals Tyrannosaurus underwent explosive teenage growth spurts, adding hundreds of kilograms annually during adolescence. Juvenile Tyrannosaurus were gracile, long-legged runners with different dentition and probably different hunting strategies than adults. These youngsters likely hunted smaller prey, filling different ecological niches and avoiding competition with adults. As they matured, their skulls deepened, their bodies bulked up, and they transitioned into the bone-crushing super predators we recognize. This ontogenetic shift meant a single Tyrannosaurus species occupied multiple ecological roles throughout its lifespan. Recent discoveries have also revealed social behavior in Tyrannosaurus. Several sites preserve multiple individuals together, adults and juveniles mixed, suggesting at least temporary groupings, possibly family units. Some fossils show healed injuries that would have been debilitating, requiring extended recovery periods during which the animal couldn't hunt effectively. These survivors might have been fed by others, hinting at social bonds and cooperative behavior. Trackways showing multiple tyrannosaurids moving together provide additional evidence that these animals weren't always solitary. Shonisaurus, the Triassic sea titan. The oceans of the Triassic period belonged to creatures so alien they seem impossible, yet their fossils prove they were terrifyingly real. Shonisaurus sicaniensis was a marine reptile measuring up to 21 meters in length, making it one of the largest vertebrates ever to swim in Earth's oceans. Discovered in British Columbia's Pardonette Formation, this ichthyosaur dwarfed modern great white sharks and rivaled the smaller baleen whales in size. But unlike whales, which are mammals that return to the sea, Shonisaurus was a reptile, a descendant of land-living ancestors that had reinvaded aquatic environments and evolved into streamlined hydrodynamic giants optimized for open ocean hunting. Ichthyosaurs, like Shonisaurus, represent one of evolution's most dramatic transformations. Within roughly 15 million years of their first appearance in the early Triassic, ichthyosaurs evolved from small, lizard-like animals into the fish-shaped apex predators of Mesozoic seas. This transformation involved wholesale reorganization of body architecture. Limbs became flippers, necks shortened, bodies became, and tails developed crescent-shaped flukes for powerful propulsion. Shonisaurus represents the pinnacle of this body plan, taking ichthyosaur design to its extreme size limit. The skull of Shonisaurus was remarkably long and narrow, exceeding 3 meters in the largest specimen. Early in life, these ichthyosaurs possessed teeth, but adults were nearly or completely toothless, a strange condition for such massive predators. Shonisaurus, the Triassic sea titan. The oceans of the Triassic period belonged to creatures so alien they seem impossible, yet their fossils prove they were terrifyingly real. Shonisaurus sicaniensis was a marine reptile measuring up to 21 meters in length, making it one of the largest vertebrates ever to swim in Earth's oceans. Discovered in British Columbia's Pardonette Formation, this ichthyosaur dwarfed modern great white sharks and rivaled the smaller baleen whales in size. But unlike whales, which are mammals that return to the sea, Shonisaurus was a reptile, a descendant of land-living ancestors that had reinvaded aquatic environments and evolved into streamlined hydrodynamic giants optimized for open ocean hunting. Ichthyosaurs, like Shonisaurus, represent one of evolution's most dramatic transformations. Within roughly 15 million years of their first appearance in the early Triassic, ichthyosaurs evolved from small, lizard-like animals into the fish-shaped apex predators of Mesozoic seas. This transformation involved wholesale reorganization of body architecture. Limbs became flippers, necks shortened, bodies became fusiform, and tails developed crescent-shaped flukes for powerful propulsion. Shonisaurus represents the pinnacle of this body plan, taking ichthyosaur design to its extreme size limit. The skull of Shonisaurus was remarkably long and narrow, exceeding 3 meters in the largest specimens. Early in life, these ichthyosaurs possessed teeth, but adults were nearly or completely toothless, a strange condition for such massive predators. This has led researchers to propose that adult Shonisaurus were suction feeders, using their long jaws to create powerful vacuum pressure that pulled prey directly into their mouths. Modern beaked whales employ similar strategies, sucking squid from deep waters without biting. Shonisaurus may have hunted in similar fashion, cruising through schools of fish or cephalopods and inhaling them wholesale. The body proportions reveal an animal built for sustained, efficient swimming rather than burst speed. The flippers were relatively small compared to body size, suggesting they served primarily for steering rather than thrust generation. The main propulsion came from the tail, a powerful crescent-shaped structure that worked like the tail flukes of modern cetaceans. Unlike fish, which generate thrust by side-to-side tail movements, Shonisaurus used vertical tail strokes, beating its tail up and down to drive forward through the water. This swimming style is remarkably convergent with modern whales, evolving entirely independently in marine reptiles. Bone histology studies reveal Shonisaurus grew rapidly in its early years before growth rates tapered off in adulthood. The bones show rich vascularization, networks of blood vessels indicating active bone deposition and high metabolic rates. Some researchers argue this evidence suggests ichthyosaurs were warm-blooded, maintaining elevated body temperatures through metabolic heat production. Others propose regional endothermy, where core body temperatures remained warm while extremities operated cooler. Either way, Shonisaurus likely had metabolic rates far exceeding modern reptiles, necessary to power its massive body through cold oceanic waters. The most remarkable discovery related to ichthyosaurs, though not Shonisaurus specifically, came from smaller species preserving soft tissue outlines and even embryos. These fossils revealed that ichthyosaurs gave birth to live young tail first, just like modern whales and dolphins. The convergence is striking. Mammals and reptiles independently evolved nearly identical solutions to the problem of reproduction at sea. Shonisaurus undoubtedly followed the same pattern, giving birth to calves potentially 3 to 4 meters long, born in the open ocean and immediately capable of swimming. Shonisaurus inhabited a Triassic ocean recovering from the devastating Permian mass extinction. Marine ecosystems were rebuilding, and the absence of many Paleozoic groups created ecological opportunities for new predators. Ichthyosaurs filled roles previously occupied by different marine reptiles, and Shonisaurus specifically may have specialized in deep water environments where large cephalopods were abundant. The Partnernet Formation preserves deep water sediments, suggesting Shonisaurus hunted in offshore pelagic zones rather than shallow coastal waters. The mystery of Shonisaurus's extinction remains partially unresolved. Ichthyosaurs as a group survived until the late Cretaceous, but the giant Shonisaurids disappeared after the late Triassic. Climate changes at the Triassic-Jurassic boundary may have disrupted oceanic food webs, Alternatively, competition from other marine reptiles, plesiosaurs and plesiosaurs, diversifying rapidly in the Jurassic, might have outcompeted these giants. Whatever the cause, Shonisaurus represents an evolutionary peak that was never repeated. Later, ichthyosaurs remained much smaller, none approaching the massive sizes of these Triassic titans. Liopleurodon, the Jurassic superpredator. Beneath the warm, shallow seas that covered much of Europe during the Middle Jurassic, an apex predator lurked that combined size, power and intelligence into a hunting package unmatched in marine reptile evolution. Liopleurodon ferox was a short-necked plesiosaur, specifically a pliosaur, measuring 6 to 7 meters in length and weighing approximately 1,500 kilograms. While popular media has exaggerated its size to absurd proportions, the real animal was impressive enough without embellishment. A streamlined, heavily muscled marine reptile with jaws capable of delivering devastating bite forces and flippers that propelled it through water with surprising agility. The skull architecture of Liopleurodon reveals sophisticated predatory adaptations. Measuring over 1 meter long, the skull was powerfully built with massive jaw muscles and reinforced bite points. The teeth were conical and slightly recurved, interlocking when the jaws closed to trap struggling prey. Each tooth bore sharp carinae, cutting edges that helped slice through flesh. Bite force estimates place Liopleurodon among the most powerful biters of any marine reptile, capable of crushing the bones of large fish, cephalopods, and other marine reptiles. Some fossil prey items show Liopleurodon bite marks punched clean through armor and shell. But Liopleurodon's most remarkable feature was its locomotion system. Unlike ichthyosaurs, which used tail propulsion, pliosaurs evolved a 4-flipper drive system that functioned like underwater flight. The flippers weren't just paddles, they were hydrofoil-shaped and angled to generate lift and thrust when moved in coordinated strokes. High-speed camera studies of living sea turtles and penguins, which use similar locomotion, show that flipper-based swimming allows exceptional maneuverability, tight turns, rapid acceleration, and three-dimensional movement through water. Liopleurodon would have been extraordinarily agile for its size, able to chase fast-moving prey and outmaneuver competitors. The flipper musculature was massive. Attachment scars on the shoulder and hip bones show where powerful muscles anchored, capable of driving the flippers through resistance-heavy water. The flippers themselves were rigid structures supported by elongated finger bones embedded in connective tissue and muscle, creating stiff wings that could be precisely angled to control thrust direction. Recent biomechanical modelling suggests pliosaurs used a tandem swimming style, with forelimbs and hind limbs coordinated but slightly out of phase, generating continuous thrust throughout the stroke cycle rather than the pulsed propulsion of tail-driven swimmers. Sensory capabilities gave Liopleurodon additional hunting advantages. The skull preserves evidence of enhanced olfactory organs, paired structures that sampled water for chemical cues. These organs functioned like underwater smell, allowing Liopleurodon to detect prey from considerable distances by following chemical gradients in the water. This adaptation would have been especially valuable in murky coastal waters or when hunting at night. The eye sockets are large, suggesting keen vision as well. The combination of chemical sensing and visual acuity made Liopleurodon a remarkably effective hunter across varying visibility conditions. The stomach contents of some pliosaurs provide direct evidence of diet. Preserved gut contents have yielded fish bones, ammonite shells, and remains of other marine reptiles. Liopleurodon was clearly an opportunistic apex predator, taking whatever prey was available and appropriately sized. Its powerful jaws could handle tough-shelled ammonites and bony fish equally well. Some specimens show healed bite marks from other pliosaurs, suggesting intraspecific aggression, fights over territory, mates, or food. The environment Liopleurodon inhabited was dramatically different from modern oceans. The Middle Jurassic Oxford Clay Sea was warm, shallow, and extraordinarily rich in life. Huge schools of fish, abundant ammonites, other marine reptiles, and the early ancestors of modern marine organisms filled these waters. The seafloor was soft mud, periodically disturbed by storms, but generally calm and oxygen-rich. These conditions created perfect hunting grounds for ambush predators, allowing Liopleurodon to hang motionless in the water column before striking upward at prey silhouetted against the bright surface. Reproduction likely followed patterns seen in other marine reptiles. Pliosaurs almost certainly gave birth to live young rather than laying eggs, as returning to land would have been extremely difficult or impossible for animals of their size and flipper morphology. Fossil evidence from smaller plesiosaurs confirms live birth in the group, and Liopleurodon surely followed suit. Newborn Liopleurodon would have been vulnerable to predation, possibly staying in shallow, protected nursery areas until reaching sizes large enough to venture into open waters alongside adults. Megalodon, the megatooth shark. In the depths of the Miocene and Pliocene oceans swam the largest predatory shark ever to exist, Otodus megalodon, a creature so massive it makes modern great white sharks look like minnows. Reaching lengths of 15 to 18 metres and weighing up to 50 tonnes or more, Megalodon dominated oceanic food webs for over 15 million years, feeding on whales, seals, dolphins, and virtually any marine mammal unfortunate enough to cross its path. Only its teeth survive in abundance, triangular, serrated, some exceeding 18 centimetres in length. But these teeth, combined with modern shark anatomy and biomechanical modelling, allow researchers to reconstruct this ultimate apex predator with remarkable confidence. The teeth alone tell an astonishing story. Megalodon possessed a mouth lined with over 250 teeth arranged in 5 rows. As front teeth wore down or broke, replacement teeth rotated forward from the rows behind, ensuring the shark always had functional dentition. Each tooth was a precision cutting tool with serrations running along both edges and a robust root anchoring it firmly in the jaw. Bite force estimates for Megalodon reach truly staggering levels, between 108,000 and 180,000 newtons, roughly 10 times more powerful than a great white shark, and sufficient to bite through the skull of a large whale in a single snap. Reconstructing Megalodon's body proportions requires comparing tooth size with those of living sharks and applying scaling relationships, using great whites as analogues. Megalodon belongs to a different lineage but shares similar ecological roles. Researchers estimate the largest Megalodon individuals reached 18 metres, with most adults ranging from 10 to 15 metres. The body was robustly built, with a massive head comprising perhaps a quarter of total body length and a thick, muscular torso tapering to a powerful crescent-shaped tail. Unlike modern great whites, which are relatively slender, Megalodon was built with bulk and power prioritised over pure speed. Hunting strategies likely combined ambush and pursuit. Megalodon's size meant it couldn't sustain the burst speeds of smaller sharks, but it didn't need to. Its prey were whales, many of which were slower and less manoeuvrable than the shark. Attack patterns can be inferred from bite marks on fossil whale bones. Megalodon targeted flippers and tail flukes first, crippling prey and preventing escape. Once the whale was immobilized, the shark could feed at leisure, using its massive jaws to tear away chunks of flesh and blubber. Some whale fossils show evidence of surviving Megalodon attacks, with healed bite wounds providing testimony to narrow escapes. The sensory systems that made Megalodon such an effective predator can be inferred from living sharks. The electroreceptive ampullae of Lorenzini, organs detecting electrical fields generated by muscle contractions, would have allowed Megalodon to sense prey hidden in murky water or even buried in sediment. Its sense of smell was likely extraordinary, capable of detecting a single drop of blood from kilometres away. The lateral line system, detecting water pressure changes and vibrations, would have made Megalodon sensitive to movements of large animals across great distances. Combined with keen vision optimised for the dim light of deeper waters, these senses made Megalodon nearly omniscient in its oceanic realm. The geographic range was global. Megalodon teeth have been found on every continent except Antarctica, indicating this shark swam in tropical, subtropical and temperate waters worldwide. It followed whale migration routes, appearing seasonally in certain regions as prey populations moved. Nursery areas, shallow, protected bays, where young Megalodon grew to juvenile size, have been identified through accumulations of smaller teeth. These nursery zones were crucial for species survival, providing young sharks with abundant small prey and protection from larger predators, including adult Megalodon, which may have been cannibalistic. The extinction of Megalodon approximately 2.6 million years ago remains debated. Climate change associated with the Pliocene-Pleistocene transition altered ocean temperatures and current patterns, disrupting whale migration routes and population distributions. Simultaneously, the emergence of modern great white sharks and orcas created new competition. Orcas, with their pack-hunting intelligence and cooperative strategies, may have outcompeted Megalodon for prey, particularly in cooler waters where whales concentrated. The combination of environmental change and biological competition ultimately proved insurmountable for these giants. Quetzalcoatlus, the flying giraffe. Imagine a giraffe with wings, an animal so preposterously large it seems to violate physics, yet capable of powered flight. Quetzalcoatlus northropi was precisely that impossible made real. A pterosaur with a wingspan exceeding 10 metres, standing as tall as a giraffe when on the ground, yet somehow capable of taking to the air and flying hundreds of kilometres. Discovered in Texas's Big Bend National Park, Quetzalcoatlus represents the absolute peak of pterosaur evolution, the largest flying animal ever to exist. Its anatomy was so extreme that decades passed before researchers could agree on how, or even if, such a creature could fly. The wingspan, estimated at 10 to 11 metres tip to tip, stretched wider than many small aircraft, yet the entire animal weighed perhaps only 200 to 250 kilograms, about as much as an adult lion. This weight-to-wingspan ratio seems impossible until you examine the skeletal construction. Quetzalcoatlus bones were hollow tubes with walls thinner than playing cards in some places, yet reinforced internally by a honeycomb structure of struts and supports that maintained strength while minimizing weight. The pneumatization extended even to the tiniest bones. Individual finger bones were air-filled, with walls measured in fractions of millimeters. The wings themselves were biological marvels of engineering. Unlike birds, which generate wing surfaces from feathers, pterosaur wings consisted of flexible membranes stretched between an enormously elongated fourth finger and the body. In Quetzalcoatlus, that fourth finger exceeded 2.5 meters in length, forming the wing's leading edge. The membrane, called the brachiopatagium, was not simple skin, but a complex structure containing muscle fibers, blood vessels, and stiffening fibers arranged to control wing shape during flight. Recent soft tissue studies suggest pterosaur wing membranes were far more sophisticated than previously thought, capable of subtle shape changes that optimized aerodynamics for different flight conditions. Taking off presented unique challenges for such a massive animal. Birds jump and flap to become airborne, but Quetzalcoatlus couldn't leap. Its legs, while long, weren't built for jumping. Instead, it used a quadrupedal launch, crouching down and then explosively extending all four limbs simultaneously, essentially vaulting into the air. Biomechanical modelling shows this launch method could generate sufficient velocity for the wings to provide lift, though the margin for error was slim. Strong winds or elevated launch points, cliffs, hills, would have made takeoffs easier and safer. Once airborne, Quetzalcoatlus was supremely efficient. With such a massive wingspan and light body, it could soar for hours with minimal flapping, riding thermal updrafts like modern vultures. The wing loading, the ratio of body weight to wing area, was exceptionally low, meaning Quetzalcoatlus could stay aloft at slow speeds without stalling. Glide ratios may have exceeded 20:1, meaning it could travel 20 metres forward for every metre of altitude lost, allowing exploitation of even weak thermals for nearly effortless long-distance flight. But what did Quetzalcoatlus eat? The skull, preserved in several specimens, is enormous, exceeding 2 metres in length, and lacks teeth. Early theories proposed fish eating, but recent analyses suggest terrestrial hunting. The jaw proportions and bite marks on prey bones indicate Quetzalcoatlus was a terrestrial stalker, walking on all fours across late Cretaceous landscapes and using its massive, sharp-edged jaws to snatch up small dinosaurs, mammals, lizards, and anything else it could swallow whole. Think of it as a flying stork crossed with a carnivorous giraffe, a stalking predator that could walk, hunt, and then fly to the next feeding ground. The neck was extraordinarily long and stiff, supporting the massive skull without drooping. Vertebrae interlocked with specialized joints that prevented lateral bending while allowing vertical movements. This construction meant Quetzalcoatlus carried its head upright like a heron, ideal for spotting ground prey while walking or standing. The neck musculature was powerful enough to drive the head downward in rapid striking motions, delivering the beak like a spear into prey animals. Evidence for Quetzalcoatlus behavior comes partly from trackways. Pterosaur footprints show these animals walked quadrupedally, with forelimbs folded so the wing finger pointed backward and only the first 3 fingers of each hand contacting the ground. The hind feet left deep impressions, showing these animals supported their weight primarily on their legs while using the arms for balance and maneuvering. Some trackways show entire groups of pterosaurs travelling together, suggesting at least temporary social behaviour, perhaps gathering at carcasses, nesting colonies, or rich feeding areas. Hatzegopteryx, the Transylvanian dragon. Even among giant Asdachid pterosaurs, Hatzegopteryx tambema stood apart, a nightmare given wings, stalking the isolated island ecosystems of late Cretaceous Romania. With a skull exceeding 3 metres in length and a wingspan potentially rivaling Quetzalcoatlus, Hatzegopteryx was unusual not for maximum size but for its robust, heavily built construction. While most giant pterosaurs were gracile flyers optimized for efficiency, Hatzegopteryx evolved in isolation on an island without large predatory dinosaurs, allowing it to adopt the role of apex terrestrial predator, a walking, flying executioner that hunted dwarf sauropods, primitive ornithopods, and anything else living on its island domain. The skull construction immediately distinguishes Hatzegopteryx from related pterosaurs, where Quetzalcoatlus had a relatively lightly built skull with thin bone walls. Hatzegopteryx possessed thick, heavily reinforced bones with internal strutting and massive jaw muscle attachment areas. This robust skull wasn't built for delicate fish grabbing or scavenging. It was a killing tool designed to dispatch struggling prey. The jaws could generate enormous bite forces, sufficient to crack bones and tear through tough hides. This reinforced construction suggests Hatzegopteryx regularly grappled with dangerous prey, absorbing impacts and resisting the thrashing of dying animals. Island dwarfism shaped the ecosystem Hatzegopteryx dominated. The Hatzeg Island, isolated from mainland Europe by seaways, hosted miniaturized versions of normally gigantic dinosaurs. Dwarf sauropods measured only 6 meters long instead of 20 or 30. Primitive ornithopods and armored dinosaurs all showed reduced sizes. Without large tyrannosaurs or other apex predators, a massive pterosaur could step into the top predator role, walking through forests and clearings on its powerful limbs, head held high on its giraffe-like neck, scanning for prey with eagle-sharp vision. Hunting strategies would have combined aerial reconnaissance with terrestrial stalking. Hatzegopteryx likely spent much of its time on the ground, walking on all fours like other Argentinids. Upon spotting prey, it could either stalk closer using cover or launch into the air for an aerial approach. The massive skull, delivered from above in a diving strike, would have been a devastating weapon. Even prey that survived the initial impact would face slashing jaws and a persistent predator capable of pursuing both on land and air. The neck vertebrae of Hatzegopteryx show extreme elongation and specialized joints, allowing rapid striking movements. Studies of modern ground hunting birds like secretary birds and siriemas show they kill prey by stamping and striking downward with powerful neck thrusts. Hatzegopteryx likely employed similar tactics, using its neck like a muscular whip to drive its beak into prey. The cervical musculature was arranged to generate maximum downward force, transforming the neck into a biological pile driver. Evidence for Hatzegopteryx's feeding habits comes from bone beds containing its remains alongside prey species. Some dwarf dinosaur fossils from the Hatzeg Basin show bite marks consistent with the beak proportions and bite mechanics of giant pterosaurs. While direct evidence linking specific bite marks to Hatzegopteryx remains circumstantial, the ecological context, an apex predator living alongside abundant small dinosaurs, makes predation almost certain. The robust skull construction would have been unnecessary unless the animal regularly tackled dangerous, struggling prey. The wing structure of Hatzegopteryx, while not completely preserved, appears similar to other Argentinids. Massive span, narrow chord, optimized for soaring. However, the heavier build may have reduced flight efficiency compared to more gracile pterosaurs. Hatzegopteryx might have flown less frequently or for shorter distances, relying more on terrestrial hunting than aerial foraging. On an isolated island with limited space, long-distance flight was unnecessary. The entire ecosystem existed within a relatively small area, all accessible by walking. Reproduction in Hatzegopteryx remains speculative, but likely followed patterns seen in other pterosaurs. These animals laid eggs with parchment-like shells, burying them in sand or soil. Hatchlings were likely precocial, capable of independent movement shortly after hatching. Young Hatzegopteryx may have faced predation from smaller theropods or even cannibalistic adults, requiring rapid growth to reach safe sizes. The isolated island environment meant fewer species competed for resources, potentially allowing faster growth rates than mainland pterosaurs. Argentinavis, the teratorn that ruled the skies. 6 million years ago, across the windswept pampas of South America, a shadow fell that could block out the sun. Argentavis magnificens was the largest flying bird ever to exist, a teratorn with a wingspan estimated between 6 and 7 meters, weighing 70 kilograms or more, equipped with a massive hooked beak and talons designed for killing. This wasn't a scavenger like modern condors, it was an active predator, a flying terror that hunted across open grasslands and could carry off prey the size of small dogs or young guanacos. Argentavis represents the absolute limit of avian flight, pushing bird design to the edge of aerodynamic possibility. The wings of Argentavis were proportioned differently from any living bird. Rather than the relatively flexible wings of eagles or albatrosses, Argentavis had extremely long, narrow wings, with low aspect ratios, essentially long stiff planks optimized for effortless soaring rather than flapping flight. The primary feathers alone exceeded 1.5 meters in length, creating wingtips that could be precisely angled to adjust lift and drag. These wings weren't built for rapid maneuvering, but for tireless soaring, allowing Argentavis to remain aloft for hours while scanning vast territories for prey. Taking off presented significant challenges. At 70 kilograms, Argentavis was too heavy for vertical takeoff. It couldn't simply jump and flap like smaller birds. Instead, it likely required running starts or launches from elevated positions. Biomechanical modelling suggests Argentavis needed to run at speeds exceeding 10 meters per second, or drop from heights of several meters to generate sufficient airspeed for the wings to provide lift. Once airborne, however, it was supremely efficient, with glide ratios potentially exceeding 20:1 and minimum sinking speeds allowing it to exploit even weak thermals. The skull reveals a predator adapted for killing rather than scavenging. The beak was massive, nearly 50 centimeters long, with a sharp, powerfully hooked tip and reinforced jaw attachments indicating strong bite forces. The nostrils were positioned unusually far back on the beak, suggesting Argentavis could plunge its beak deep into prey or carcasses without blocking airflow. The skull construction lacks the delicate, lightweight features typical of scavenging birds, and instead shows robust construction consistent with subduing, struggling prey. The jaw muscles were arranged to generate both powerful biting force and rapid snapping motions. The hunting strategy likely combined soaring surveillance with surprise attacks. Argentavis would have ridden thermals for hours, using minimal energy, while its keen eyes scanned the grasslands below. Upon spotting prey, perhaps a juvenile mammal separated from its herd, it could enter a shallow dive, building speed before striking with outstretched talons. The impact alone might stun or kill smaller prey. The massive beak would deliver finishing blows, and the talons, while not as robust as those of eagles, could grip prey firmly enough to fly off with the carcass to a safe feeding location. The feet of Argentavis were proportioned more like a stork's than an eagle's, long toes with relatively straight talons better suited for walking than grasping. This suggests Argentavis spent considerable time on the ground, perhaps walking through grasslands to flush prey or approaching carcasses on foot. The leg bones show robust construction capable of supporting the bird's full weight comfortably, unlike some flying birds whose legs are minimally constructed for weight savings. Argentavis was equally adapted for terrestrial and aerial life. The environment Argentavis inhabited, the Miocene pampas, was vast open grassland populated by diverse mammalian megafauna. Ground sloths, primitive armadillos, early camelids, and numerous rodent species filled ecological niches. This abundance of prey, combined with relatively few competing predators, allowed Argentavis to thrive as an aerial apex predator. The open terrain favoured soaring hunters, as thermals were strong and prey was visible across great distances. Reproduction likely involved cliff nesting. Modern tetrans and large raptors typically nest on inaccessible cliff faces, protected from ground predators. Argentavis eggs would have been enormous, perhaps the size of a volleyball, requiring extensive incubation. Both parents likely participated in incubation and chick rearing, as a single adult would struggle to provide sufficient food for rapidly growing young. Fledging would have been a perilous process, with young birds needing to master soaring techniques before attempting powered flight. Titanoboa, the serpent that ate crocodiles. In the steaming rainforests of Paleocene Colombia 58 million years ago, a serpent slithered that dwarfed any snake alive today. Titanoboa cerrejonensis measured up to 13 meters in length and weighed over 1,000 kilograms. a constrictor so massive it preyed on crocodiles, large fish, and anything else inhabiting the tropical rivers and swamps of its world. Discovered in the Cerrejón coal mines, Titanoboa represents what happens when climate, ecology, and evolutionary opportunity align to produce a supersized predator. Its existence provides crucial insights into Paleocene ecosystems, ancient climate conditions, and the outer limits of serpent evolution. The size of Titanoboa isn't arbitrary. It directly reflects the climate conditions of the Paleocene. Modern snakes, being ectothermic, depend on environmental temperatures to maintain body function. Larger snakes require warmer baseline temperatures to keep their massive bodies operational. By working backward from Titanoboa's size and using modern snake physiology as a guide, researchers calculated that average temperatures in Paleocene Colombia must have exceeded 30 degrees Celsius year-round, several degrees warmer than the same region today. Titanoboa serves as a biological thermometer, recording ancient climate conditions in its very body plan. The vertebrae, the primary fossils preserved, are enormous and distinctive. Each vertebra measures over 10 centimeters in length with massive articulation surfaces and prominent processes for muscle attachment. The vertebral column of Titanoboa contained over 250 vertebrae, each one mobile, allowing the snake to move with surprising flexibility despite its bulk. The ribs were thick and curved, forming a barrel-shaped body capable of containing the massive internal organs necessary to process large prey. The overall body plan follows typical boa construction, but scaled up to nightmarish proportions. Constriction in Titanoboa would have been catastrophically powerful. Modern anacondas can generate pressure exceeding 20 kilopascals when constricting, enough to stop blood flow and induce cardiac arrest. Titanoboa, with vastly greater muscle mass and mechanical advantage, could exert pressures several times higher. Prey caught in Titanoboa's coils would have had no chance of escape. The snake would wrap around the victim's torso, tightening incrementally with each exhalation until the chest could no longer expand and the heart stopped. Death came through circulatory failure rather than suffocation, faster and more efficient. The diet of Titanoboa can be inferred from its size and the ecosystem it inhabited. The Cerrejón Formation preserves a diverse fauna, including large freshwater turtles, crocodilians, lungfish, and enormous catfish. Titanoboa coexisted with dirosaurid crocodiles, primitive crocodile relatives measuring 4 to 6 meters long. Bite marks on some turtle shells match the jaw proportions of large boids, suggesting Titanoboa fed on hard-shelled prey. It likely ambushed animals coming to water to drink, striking from murky water with explosive speed before dragging prey underwater to drown and consume. The habitat, tropical rainforest with extensive river systems, provided ideal conditions for an ambush predator of Titanoboa's lifestyle. Dense vegetation offered cover along riverbanks. The warm, slow-moving water maintained temperatures high enough for optimal snake metabolism while providing abundant prey. The lack of large mammalian predators in the Paleocene, most modern mammalian carnivore groups had not yet evolved, left ecological space for a reptilian apex predator. Titanoboa filled that role with spectacular efficiency. Hunting strategy likely combined patience and explosive action. Titanoboa would submerge in murky water, with only its eyes and nostrils breaking the surface, remaining motionless for hours. Upon detecting prey, perhaps using heat-sensing pits like modern boids, it would strike with startling speed, dragging animals into the water where its immense strength gave it overwhelming advantage. Unlike terrestrial hunts where prey might flee, aquatic ambushes offered little escape possibility. Once in Titanoboa's coils, prey was doomed. Deinosuchus, the terror crocodile. The rivers and coastal swamps of late Cretaceous North America were stalked by a predator that made modern crocodiles look like harmless lizards. Deinosuchus, meaning terrible crocodile, was a monstrous crocodilian measuring up to 12 meters in length and weighing 8,000 kilograms or more. With a skull exceeding 2 meters long and jaws capable of crushing dinosaur bones, Deinosuchus was the apex predator of its aquatic ecosystems, hunting everything from large fish to drinking dinosaurs unlucky enough to approach the water's edge. Its fossils, found from Montana to Texas, reveal an animal that dominated every environment it inhabited. The skull of Deinosuchus is massively overbuilt for durability and power. The bones are thick and heavily reinforced, with expanded areas for jaw muscle attachment. The teeth are conical and robust, not the slicing teeth of theropod dinosaurs, but crushing teeth designed to crack shells, splinter bones, and hold struggling prey. Unlike modern crocodiles with teeth of varying sizes, Deinosuchus had relatively uniform dentition optimized for powerful gripping rather than precision cutting. The jaw joint is positioned below the tooth row, creating a mechanical advantage that multiplied bite force to extraordinary levels. Bite force estimates for Deinosuchus range up to 100,000 newtons, exceeding Tyrannosaurus rex and comparable to Megalodon. This crushing power would have made even armored prey vulnerable. Fossil evidence supports this. Dinosaur bones from the same formation show distinctive bite marks matching Deinosuchus tooth proportions and spacing. Some bones show punctures penetrating completely through, demonstrating the predator's ability to overcome even thick dinosaur cortical bone. Hadrosaur fossils display healed bite wounds, proof that some animals survived encounters but carried the scars for life. The body plan combined crocodilian efficiency with extreme size. Deinosuchus retained the classic crocodilian form, elongated body, short limbs, powerful tail, but scaled to monstrous proportions. The osteoderms, bony plates embedded in the skin, were massive, providing both protection and thermoregulation. These plates formed interlocking armor across the back and sides, making Deinosuchus virtually invulnerable to attack by other predators. The osteoderms also anchored powerful back muscles used in the characteristic crocodilian death roll, the spinning maneuver used to tear chunks from large prey. Hunting strategies likely paralleled modern crocodilians, but adapted for much larger prey. Deinosuchus would submerge in rivers or estuaries, using its nostrils and eyes, positioned atop the skull, to monitor the shore while remaining hidden. When dinosaurs approached to drink, Deinosuchus would explode from the water with shocking speed, clamping its jaws around a leg or neck. The initial bite alone might be crippling. The predator would then drag the victim into deeper water, using its weight and the death roll to drown and dismember prey. For smaller prey, a single crushing bite might suffice. The tail of Deinosuchus was a biological battering ram and propulsion system. Making up roughly half the total body length, the muscular tail generated powerful thrust that propelled the animal through water with surprising speed. In short bursts, Deinosuchus could likely outpace most swimming prey, though sustained chases weren't its strategy. The tail also served as a weapon. Some researchers suggest Deinosuchus could swing its tail like a club, stunning fish or striking competitors and prey on land. Distribution across North America suggests Deinosuchus tolerated varying salinities. Fossils appear in both freshwater river deposits and coastal marine sediments, indicating the animal moved between environments following prey or seasonal patterns. This flexibility gave Deinosuchus access to diverse food sources: freshwater fish, turtles, dinosaurs at riverside drinking sites, marine fish, sea turtles, and perhaps even mosasaurs venturing into coastal shallows. Growth rates deduced from bone histology show Deinosuchus grew rapidly in its early years, before growth tapered off in adulthood. Like modern crocodilians, it likely continued growing slowly throughout life, with the largest, oldest individuals reaching maximum sizes. This indeterminate growth meant ancient, well-fed Deinosuchus in prime territories could exceed typical size ranges, becoming legendary monsters in their ecosystems. Some researchers estimate the largest individuals might have approached or exceeded 13 metres, firmly in the realm of prehistoric nightmares. These giants of prehistory, from the titanosaurs that shook the earth to the marine reptiles that ruled ancient seas, from the flying behemoths that darkened the skies to the colossal predators that stalked every ecosystem, represent evolution's grandest experiments in scale. Their reign reshaped the planet, carved landscapes, established food webs, and pushed biological engineering to its absolute limits. They proved that life, given the right conditions, could achieve sizes that seem impossible. And though they've vanished into deep time, their fossilized bones continue telling stories of a world where giants truly walked, swam, and flew, reminding us that Earth's history contains wonders far stranger and more spectacular than we can imagine. Purosaurus, the Amazon's armoured leviathan. 20 million years ago, the rivers of South America belonged to a predator so massive, so overwhelmingly powerful, that even the largest modern crocodiles pale in comparison. Purosaurus brasiliensis was a caiman, a member of the alligator family, but scaled up to nightmarish dimensions. 12.5 metres in length, weighing over 8,000 kilograms, with a skull alone measuring nearly 2 metres. This wasn't just the largest caiman ever to exist, it was one of the largest crocodilians in Earth's history, dominating the vast wetland systems of Miocene Amazonia with a combination of size, strength, and crushing bite force that made it virtually unstoppable. The skull of Purosaurus is a masterpiece of biological engineering designed for one purpose: delivering catastrophic bite forces to anything unfortunate enough to enter its jaws. The bones are extraordinarily thick and reinforced, with massive temporal fenestrae, openings in the skull, that house jaw muscles of staggering size. Conservative bite force estimates place Purosaurus at 69,000 newtons, but some researchers argue the largest individuals could have exceeded 100,000 newtons, rivaling or surpassing Tyrannosaurus rex. This crushing power wasn't for show. It was essential for subduing the giant prey sharing Purosaurus's world. The teeth revealed the predatory strategy. Unlike the relatively uniform dentition of some crocodilians, Purosaurus possessed teeth of varying sizes positioned strategically throughout the jaw. The front teeth were conical and robust, designed for gripping and holding struggling prey. The teeth farther back were thicker and more rounded, crushing teeth capable of splintering bones and cracking turtle shells. This dental arrangement allowed Purosaurus to both capture and process prey with brutal efficiency. Fossil turtle shells from the same deposits show bite marks matching Purosaurus tooth spacing, some with punctures driven completely through armour several centimetres thick. The environment Purosaurus inhabited was dramatically different from modern Amazonia. The Miocene Amazon wasn't the fast-flowing river we know today, but an enormous wetland system called the Pibas megawetland. A vast, interconnected series of lakes, swamps, and slow-moving rivers covering an area larger than modern Portugal. Water depths varied seasonally, creating diverse habitats where giant caimans coexisted with enormous turtles, massive catfish, early dolphins, and a bizarre array of aquatic mammals found nowhere else. This rich ecosystem provided abundant prey for an apex predator of Purosaurus's caliber. Prey selection likely focused on large vertebrates. The Miocene Amazon hosted giant turtles with shells exceeding 2 meters in diameter, primitive hoofed mammals visiting the water's edge to drink, enormous lungfish, and other crocodilians. Purosaurus's size and bite force allowed it to tackle prey inaccessible to smaller predators. Where modern caimans hunt fish and small mammals, Purosaurus could ambush horse-sized herbivores, drag them into the water, and dispatch them with bone-crushing efficiency. The death roll, the spinning maneuver crocodilians use to tear flesh, would have been devastating when executed by an 8-ton predator. Hunting strategy would have been classic crocodilian ambush tactics scaled to terrifying proportions. Purosaurus would submerge in murky water near riverbanks or lake shores, using the elevated position of its eyes and nostrils to monitor the shore while remaining nearly invisible. The dark, sediment-rich water of Amazonian wetlands provided perfect concealment. When prey approached the water's edge, perhaps a phoberomies, a giant rodent the size of a cow, or a toxodontid mammal coming to drink, Purosaurus would erupt from the water with explosive speed. The initial lunge could cover several meters, closing the distance before prey could react. The bite itself would be catastrophic. Those massive jaws, driven by tons of muscle force, could clamp around a leg, neck or torso, with pressures exceeding anything the prey had evolved to withstand. Bones would splinter, organs would rupture, and the victim would be dragged underwater within seconds. For larger prey, requiring more effort, Purosaurus would employ the death roll, spinning its body violently to tear away chunks of flesh or twist limbs from their sockets. The combination of crushing bite force, overwhelming mass, and aquatic maneuverability made escape virtually impossible once the predator struck. The extinction of Purosaurus remains partially mysterious. The giant caiman disappeared as the Pebas mega-wetland system gradually transformed into the modern Amazon River drainage, a process driven by Andean mountain uplift, altering regional hydrology. As the vast, stable wetlands converted into faster-flowing rivers with more seasonal variation, the ecosystem that supported Purosaurus collapsed. The giant turtles, enormous fish, and diverse aquatic mammals that formed its prey base declined or went extinct. Meanwhile, the changing environment favoured more adaptable, smaller crocodilians better suited to dynamic river systems. Purosaurus, supremely adapted to the mega-wetland, couldn't adjust quickly enough to survive the transformation. Paraceratherium, the giraffe rhino giant. Imagine a mammal so tall it could browse treetops 5 meters off the ground, with a neck like a giraffe's, a body like a rhinoceros, and legs as thick as tree trunks. Paraceratherium, also known historically as Indricotherium, was the largest land mammal ever to exist, towering over the Oligocene landscapes of Asia like a living monument to evolutionary gigantism. Standing 5 meters at the shoulder and measuring 8 meters in length, weighing an estimated 15 to 20 tons. This hornless rhinoceros relative redefined the possibilities of terrestrial mammalian size. Its discovery revolutionized understanding of mammalian evolution and demonstrated that mammals, like dinosaurs before them, could achieve truly colossal proportions. The skull of Paraceratherium was massive, yet surprisingly delicate in construction. A long, deep structure designed for housing powerful jaw muscles while minimizing weight. The front of the skull featured a downward curving snout with enormous upper lips and a prehensile upper lip that functioned like a simplified trunk. This lip could strip leaves from branches, select particular shoots, and manipulate vegetation with surprising dexterity. The dentition was specialized for processing tough vegetation, massive molars with complex ridges for grinding fibrous plant matter, and distinctive incisors that formed small tusks used for pulling down branches or stripping bark. The neck vertebrae tell the story of how Paraceratherium achieved its towering height. Each cervical vertebra was massively elongated, creating a neck that stretched nearly 2 meters while maintaining sufficient strength to support the enormous skull. The vertebrae featured tall neural spines and robust transverse processes, projections that anchored powerful neck muscles. These muscles allowed Paraceratherium to raise and lower its head through a vertical range of several meters, accessing food from ground level to high branches, essentially feeding across the entire vertical profile of its environment. This capability was crucial in the seasonal, semi-arid landscapes it inhabited, where being able to exploit multiple feeding heights provided competitive advantages. The limb bones were constructed like biological pillars, among the most robust long bones ever evolved by any land mammal. The femur, thigh bone, exceeded 1.5 meters in length with a shaft diameter approaching 20 centimeters. The bone walls were thick and dense, with minimal internal cavitation, designed purely to support immense static loads. The leg joints were massive, with articular surfaces spreading load across large areas of cartilage. Unlike elephants, which walk on their toes with a specialized foot pad, Paraceratherium had relatively conventional ungulate feet, but scaled to enormous proportions. Each foot left circular impressions nearly a meter in diameter, pressed deep into soft soil by forces exceeding 2 tons. Locomotion was necessarily slow and measured. Biomechanical analysis suggests Paraceratherium walked at speeds of perhaps 3 to 5 kilometers per hour during normal movement, with maximum speeds likely not exceeding 10 to 15 kilometers per hour, even in flight from danger. The sheer mass involved meant that rapid movement was both energetically expensive and mechanically risky. A fall could result in catastrophic injuries. The walking gait probably resembled a slow-motion elephant walk, with each foot planted deliberately and the animal's weight shifting smoothly from one leg to the next to minimize dynamic loading. The environment Paraceratherium inhabited was characterized by open woodlands and grasslands with scattered trees, parkland ecosystems driven by seasonal rainfall patterns. These landscapes, stretching across Central Asia during the Oligocene, provided ideal conditions for a giant browser. Trees and shrubs offered abundant high-quality foliage inaccessible to ground-level herbivores. Seasonal variation meant food availability fluctuated, favouring animals that could exploit multiple food sources and travel between resource patches. Paraceratherium's size provided advantages in both regards. It could reach food others couldn't, and its long legs covered ground efficiently. The diet consisted primarily of leaves, shoots, and soft vegetation from trees and tall shrubs. The toothwear patterns show Paraceratherium fed on relatively soft plant matter rather than the tough grasses that would later dominate Asian landscapes. This browsing lifestyle, similar to modern giraffes, allowed Paraceratherium to avoid competition with ground-level grazers. The animal could consume several hundred kilograms of vegetation daily, spending much of its waking hours feeding to meet the metabolic demands of its enormous body. The prehensile lip allowed selective feeding, choosing the most nutritious leaves and shoots while avoiding tougher stems and thorns. Social behaviour remains speculative, but fossil assemblages suggest Paraceratherium may have been somewhat social, at least seasonally. Multiple individuals preserved in proximity hint at small groups, perhaps family units or loose aggregations at preferred feeding areas. Modern large herbivores often form groups for predator detection, though Paraceratherium's size made it virtually immune to predation as an adult. More likely, social behaviour facilitated mating opportunities and allowed younger animals to learn optimal feeding areas from experienced individuals. Vocalizations, perhaps low-frequency rumbles similar to elephant infrasound, might have enabled communication across the open woodlands. Reproduction would have involved long gestation periods, estimates suggest 16 to 20 months, producing single calves weighing perhaps 100 to 200 kilograms at birth. Newborns would have been vulnerable to predation from hyenodonts, early cats, and other Oligocene carnivores, requiring maternal protection for the first year or more of life. Growth rates would have been rapid during the juvenile phase, with young animals adding hundreds of kilograms annually before growth tapered off in adulthood. Sexual maturity likely wasn't reached until the second decade of life, and individuals might have lived 40 to 50 years or more. Thermoregulation presented unique challenges for an animal of Paraceratherium's size. the surface area to volume ratio was extremely low, meaning heat generated by metabolism dissipated slowly. In the warm Oligocene climate, overheating was a constant risk. Paraceratherium may have employed behavioural thermoregulation, seeking shade during the hottest parts of the day, feeding more actively during cooler morning and evening hours. The elongated limbs and neck increase surface area slightly, helping with heat dissipation. And like modern elephants, Paraceratherium might have had relatively large ears or specialised skin structures to facilitate cooling, though these soft tissues aren't preserved in fossils. The extinction of Paraceratherium coincided with major climatic and ecological changes during the Oligocene-Miocene transition. Global climates cooled and dried, grasslands expanded at the expense of woodlands, and the parkland ecosystem Paraceratherium depended on shrank dramatically. The spread of tough, silica-rich grasses favoured grazers with high-crowned teeth adapted to abrasive vegetation. Teeth Paraceratherium lacked. Simultaneously, more efficient browsers, early giraffids, and other specialised ungulates competed for diminishing woodland resources. Paraceratherium, supremely adapted to a specific ecosystem, couldn't adapt quickly enough to survive the transformation. By the early Miocene, the last populations had disappeared, ending 20 million years of Indrico their dominance in Asian ecosystems.